My name is Lin Wei. I am 48 years old, and until that fateful Friday evening, I was the chief architect of the Shin Long Real Estate Group, a man who had just completed his life's work. Tonight, I was standing on top of the world, or more precisely, on the rooftop of the Moonlit Pagoda, a 108-story dragon of glass and steel, soaring proudly against the Shanghai skyline. It was the child of my spirit, a creation I had spent a full decade nurturing, meticulously crafting every line, every material. Below me, the city's millions of lights stretched out like a man-made galaxy, the Huangpu River winding through it like a ribbon of black silk. In the opulent grand hall behind me, the clinking of champagne glasses mingled with endless praise and jubilant laughter. They were celebrating me, celebrating my work, celebrating the new icon of prosperity I had just bestowed upon this city. Master Lin, a true masterpiece. Chairman Wang clapped me firmly on the shoulder, his smile radiant under the crystal lights, though it never quite reached his eyes. Wang always addressed me that way, Master Lin, a title that sounded respectful but always created an invisible distance. He pointed towards the hanging garden on the 99th floor, where thousands of automated LED lights had just illuminated in sync with a programmed virtual moon cycle. Only you could conceive of something so outrageously elegant. Your late master must be smiling down from heaven. He draped an arm around my shoulder, a falsely intimate gesture, and led me to a private balcony, away from the bustling crowd. It was just the two of us, with the cool Shanghai night breeze, carrying the damp scent of the sea. There's something I need to discuss with you privately. His tone suddenly turned icy, the smile vanishing without a trace. The warmth from moments ago was just a mask, and now it was off. A sense of foreboding crept into my chest. Starting tomorrow, you no longer need to come to the company, Wang said bluntly, his eyes as sharp as daggers, boring into mine. The project is complete, and so is your role. We are restructuring the entire design department. We need new blood, more modern thinking. I was speechless, my throat suddenly dry. My ears were ringing. 17 years of dedication. 17 years, from a young, ambitious man personally mentored by my master, the group's founder, to the chief architect, the keeper of Shinlong's soul. All of it, ending with such a casual, cruel sentence? At the very pinnacle of my own triumph? Chairman Wang, you mean? I managed to stammer. I mean you're fired, he cut in, impatience lacing his voice. Clear out your desk by Monday morning. Security will escort you to ensure you don't take anything that belongs to the company. Just as I was trying to process the unbelievable shock, a deafening roar erupted from deep below. The entire tower shuddered violently as if struck by an earthquake. The wine glass on a nearby table toppled over, shattering into pieces. I gripped the cold steel railing, staring down in horror. A massive, dense plume of dust and smoke billowed up from a corner of the foundation, obscuring a large patch of the sky. Under the powerful floodlights from outside, a horrific, surreal scene unfolded before my eyes. Dozens of heavy excavators, steel beasts that had been dormant just hours before, were now roaring to life, waiting in formation. They began to advance, their giant mechanical arms swinging up and then mercilessly smashing into the glass curtain walls I had handpicked, turning them into a glittering rain of glass in the night. They were destroying it. They were destroying the Moonlit Pagoda. My child. I whipped around to face Wang, my throat choked, unable to form words. He stood there, terrifyingly calm, lighting an expensive Cuban cigar. He took a long drag, then slowly exhaled a ring of gray-white smoke into the chaotic night. His expression was utterly unfazed, as if he were watching a rather dull fireworks display. Why? I finally screamed, my voice barely audible over the roar of the machinery. Wang turned to look at me, a cruel, contemptuous smirk playing on his lips. Because it has a fatal flaw, Lin Wei, a critical structural error discovered at the last minute. The engineering committee concluded so. We cannot risk thousands of lives for the ego of one architect. He paused for a second, letting his venomous words sink deep into my mind. And the report indicates that the flaw originated from your master design. The flaw bears your name. The second shock, even more devastating than the first, completely broke me. He wasn't just firing me. He was destroying my career, my reputation, my entire legacy. He was burying it along with the rubble of the building. He was turning me, the hero of the hour, into the city's greatest villain. Number impossible, I stammered, my mind reeling. Every parameter, every calculation was perfect. I checked them 1,000 times. The board of directors has already made the decision, he said, his voice dripping with triumph. Demolition for the sake of safety is the only option. Of course, we will be suing you for this catastrophic loss. You should prepare your lawyers." He stepped forward and patted my shoulder, a gesture of ultimate humiliation. Sometimes, to build a new future, one must demolish the past. You are the past, Linway. He turned his back and walked inside, rejoining the still panicked crowd, leaving me alone on the balcony, numb, watching my life's dream being crushed into literal ashes. But amidst the chaos and utter despair, an image flashed in my mind. The old sandalwood box my master had given me on his deathbed. When you feel you've lost all direction, he had held my hand and whispered, "Open it. My true legacy lies within." I had never opened it. I always thought it was just a sentimental keepsake. But tonight, standing amidst the ashes of everything I had ever built, I knew I had lost all direction. And perhaps, the answer to this insane, surreal nightmare was, somehow, waiting inside that box. I don't remember how I got home. Perhaps in a taxi. Perhaps I walked aimlessly. My mind was a hollow void, echoing only with the sound of metal crashing against concrete, the shattering of glass, and Wang's cruel smirk. Security had escorted me out of the building site in a heavy, suffocating silence. No one dared to look me in the eye. Colleagues, young engineers who once saw me as their idol, now just bowed their heads. Eyes once filled with admiration now held only pity, or worse, contempt. The news spread faster than the excavators could tear down the walls. Lin Wei, the genius architect, the man who created a ticking time bomb in the heart of Shanghai. I could already imagine the headlines in tomorrow's papers. My career was dead, right before my very eyes. My wife, An Chi, was waiting at the door, her face etched with worry. She asked no questions when she saw my devastated state, simply opened her arms and held me as I nearly collapsed on the threshold. She had seen the news. That embrace was the only anchor keeping me grounded in reality. All night, I sat motionless in my study, a space I once considered a sanctuary of creativity. The room was filled with rolled-up blueprints, intricate architectural models of the Moonlit Pagoda at various stages. Now, they looked like miniature tombstones, a graveyard for my dream. Over and over, I reviewed the structural drawings, the load calculation files, trying to find a mistake, however small. But there was nothing. Everything was perfect, precise down to the millimeter. Near dawn, as the first faint light of Saturday crept through the window blinds, my eyes landed on the sandalwood box resting on the highest shelf of my bookcase. It had been there for 5 years, ever since my master passed away. Dust had settled in a thin layer, as if it belonged to another world, another era. My master was a traditional man. He believed in feng shui, in fate, in legacies that couldn't be measured by money. He taught me that every building has a soul, and the architect's duty is to awaken it. Wang, in contrast, believed only in the numbers on a balance sheet. He saw buildings as commodities, and people as tools. With trembling hands, I stood on a stool and carefully took the box down. It was heavier than I expected. The distinctive scent of sandalwood, deep and calming, filled the air, a fragrance of wisdom, of the past. The small bronze lock had aged to a dull patina. It needed no key, only a secret latch hidden beneath an intricate carving, which my master had shown me long ago. I gently pressed it, and the box opened with a dry click. Inside, there were no jewels or valuables, only a stack of yellowed drawing paper and a worn, leather-bound notebook. I carefully spread the papers on my desk. It was a set of original drawings for the Moonlit Pagoda, but not the final construction version. This was the initial conceptual design, covered with my master's handwritten notes in fountain pen ink in the margins. He had outlined the soul of the building, his philosophies on the harmony between man and nature, between tradition and modernity, which I had strived to follow. These words felt like a whisper from the past, reminding me of my original purpose. But it was the leather-bound notebook that truly drew my attention. I turned the pages, feeling the rough texture of the paper under my fingertips. My master's handwriting was still strong and decisive, just like the man himself. The first few pages were project progress notes, meeting minutes, and ideas. But as I read further, towards the end, his tone grew increasingly worried, even angry. And then, the final entry, dated just 1 week before he died suddenly of a heart attack, made the blood in my veins run cold. Wang has gone too far. He has unilaterally replaced the entire shipment of C11 grade high-strength steel specified in the design with a cheaper C9 grade from a shady supplier named Golden Rock Trading. He claims it's for cost optimization. I objected vehemently in the meeting, but he used his chairman's authority to overrule me, saying he would take full responsibility. He even forged the materials inspection reports. That bastard is building a beautiful shell on a rotten skeleton. My heart pounded in my chest. I flipped to the back of the page. There was another note, the handwriting slightly more shaky. The geological report for Plot B7 is a fake. I suspected it for a long time and secretly hired an independent firm to resurvey. There is an unstable karst cave system directly beneath the Northwest Foundation area. Wang knows this. He bribed the construction inspector to cover it up. If there's a minor earthquake, or even just natural subsidence from the building's load, the whole structure will collapse. He is not building a tower, he is building a tomb for thousands of people. Below was a list of shell companies, a few overseas account numbers, and the names of a couple of low-level officials. I sank back into my chair, the notebook slipping from my numb fingers and falling to the floor. All the pieces of the puzzle slammed into place, forming a horrifying picture. Wang didn't demolish the building just to frame me. That was merely a 2-for-1 deal, a perfect smokescreen. He demolished it to bury the evidence of his own crimes before it was too late. He knew the rotten skeleton, the unstable foundation, was about to be exposed. He knew a catastrophe was imminent, and he needed a scapegoat, a name big enough to carry the entire blame. Me. The despair in my heart vanished, replaced by a rage so cold it burned. This was no longer about my personal honor. This was a crime against this entire city. My master hadn't given me this legacy to be worshipped in a corner of my room. He had given it to me as a weapon, as his final testament. And I, his student, would use it. I would make Wang pay for every broken brick, every stolen yuan, and for the most vicious betrayal of all. The initial blaze of rage subsided, giving way to a cold, calculated calm. Wang was an old fox, a man accustomed to walking tightropes and erasing his tracks. He wouldn't leave obvious evidence lying around. My master's notebook was a bombshell, but if I were to reveal it blindly, Wang would easily dismiss it. He'd claim they were the ramblings of a bitter old man, disgruntled before his death. I needed tangible proof, official documents, things that would be irrefutable in a court of law. I needed someone still on the inside, within the walls of Xinlong. And the only name that came to mind was Zhao Li. His full name was Li Ming, a young, brilliant, and passionate structural engineer. I had recognized his talent when he was just a timid intern. I had mentored him, taught him not just about complex formulas and simulation software, but about professional ethics, about the soul of a structure. He owed me a debt of gratitude, but more importantly, he revered my master as a saint in the industry. His ideals had not yet been eroded by corporate politics and greed. I couldn't use my own phone. It was surely being monitored. I went out, found a small electronics shop, and bought a cheap burner phone and a disposable SIM card. Standing in an unfamiliar alley, I dialed Xiaoli's number. It rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hello?" His voice was groggy with sleep. "It's me, Master Lin," I said. "Master Lin?" His voice immediately snapped to attention, a mix of surprise and a hint of fear. "How did you?" "Everyone at the company island." "Listen to me, Xiaoli. Don't ask any questions. Just listen," I said quickly, my voice firm. "I know you are a good man, and I know you respect my master. I need you to do something for me. This could be dangerous, it could cost you your job, but it concerns the truth and my master's honor. Are you willing to do it?" I could hear him swallow hard on the other end of the line. The silence stretched for a few seconds, which felt like an eternity. I knew I was putting him in an incredibly difficult position. "Tell me what to do, Master." "I'll do it," he finally replied, his voice now steady and determined. "Good," I breathed a sigh of relief. In the central project data archive for the Moonlit Pagoda, there's a subfolder named Geo, Prelum B7. It contains the preliminary geological survey reports for Plot B7, conducted by the consulting firm Juding Geosciences. I need the original report, version 1.0, dated March 2018. Make sure it's the very first version, not any of the later revised ones. But the system has already revoked all your access rights. And after the incident, IT security is on high alert. Every unusual access is being logged. I know, but you are a structural engineer. You have legitimate access to geological data for cross-referencing parameters. Find a plausible reason. Say you need the original data to write a summary report on the lessons learned from Lin Wei's design flaws. Use Wang's own narrative against them. Get the file, Copy it to an encrypted USB drive, and never open it on any company computer. Don't let a single soul know. Another pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. This was a gamble. If he refused or was discovered, everything would be over. I understand. Give me 2 days, I'll find a way, he said decisively. Those 2 days felt like 2 centuries. I turned my study into a secret command center. I bought a brand new laptop, paying in cash. I didn't connect it to my home Wi-Fi, using a 4 grams dongle with another burner SIM instead. I installed security software, VPNs, and created temporary encrypted email accounts. I studied my master's drawings again, comparing every detail with what I remembered vividly from the final construction plans. The discrepancies were in the small but critical details: the thickness of the main support beams, the grade of the concrete in crucial areas, the type of rebar used. Wang and his cronies had altered them subtly to pass standard inspections. I lived in a state of extreme tension. Every phone ring, every strange noise outside my door made me jump. And she knew I was up to something, but she didn't ask, simply preparing my meals and leaving them outside my study door. Her silent trust was an immense source of strength for me. Exactly 48 hours later, late on Monday night, an email arrived in the encrypted inbox I had created. The sender was an anonymous string of random characters. There was no subject, no content, only a single password-protected compressed file attached. Xiao Li had sent the password via a separate text message, just one word: master. My heart pounded in my chest as I downloaded the file. I unzipped it. A series of PDF files appeared. It was a full-color scan of the original geological report from Juding Geosciences. I quickly scrolled to the conclusion page, the one I knew was most important. And then, I saw it. A paragraph marked in red ink by an engineer, with a handwritten note in the margin: urgent. Chairman must reconsider. The paragraph read: a significant limestone karst cave system has been detected at a depth of 80 meters beneath the northwest foundation area, plot B7. The structure is unstable and poses a high risk of subsidence under the heavy load of a supertall skyscraper. Recommendation: absolutely avoid construction of primary load bearing structures on this area, or implement special, extremely costly foundation reinforcement solutions, potentially adding up to 20% of the total construction cost. The report that I and my entire design team had later received had absolutely no mention of this fatal warning. That page had been replaced. I had it. The first link. An irrefutable piece of evidence of deliberate fraud. Wang knew the land was flawed, yet he consciously chose to build on it. He had signed the death warrant for the Moonlit Pagoda from day one, and pinned the blame entirely on me. A wave of relief and fury washed over me simultaneously. This was only the beginning. Having the original geological report in my hands was like finding the first cornerstone in my effort to bring down Wang. It was a crucial victory, but it only told part of the story. It proved Wang knew about the foundation risk, but it wasn't enough to prove he had intentionally gutted the project with substandard materials. I needed more pieces to complete the puzzle of his crimes. My master's notebook had pointed the way, but I needed to turn his words into cold, hard evidence. I contacted Xiao Li again through our secure channel. This time, his voice was calmer and much more confident. He was no longer a scared young engineer, but a true co-conspirator. "I knew you'd call, Master," he said as soon as he recognized my number. "After reviewing that original report and comparing it with the version I have, I understand everything now. It's unbelievable." "Good," I replied, glad that he was fully on my side. "Now I need something else. Something much harder. I need the acceptance records for the construction materials, specifically for the shipments of C11 grade high-strength steel delivered by the official supplier, Xingsheng Steel, and their corresponding internal quality inspection reports for the past 2 years. There was a moment of silence on the other end. That's nearly impossible, Master. The materials department is managed by one of Chairman Wang's most trusted lackeys, a guy named Fatty Zhang. All important documents are locked in a safe and classified as top-level confidential. I have no access clearance. I don't need you to break in. That would be suicide, I said. I need you to do something else, something that requires subtle observation. Wang is no fool. He knows what kind of trail he's left. After this incident, he will definitely clean up. Keep an eye out for any document shredding or disposal. Any unusual activity, like moving large boxes of documents at night. If you see them moving documents, find a way to know where they are going. I just need the address. Just as I predicted. A day later, in the evening, Xiao Li called again, his voice urgent and hushed. "Master, You were right. They're doing it. A private security team is packing up boxes and boxes of files from the materials and accounting departments. They're not using company vans, but an unmarked truck. I pretended to go out for food and followed them. They took everything to an old industrial warehouse complex in the Jiading district. He read me the exact address. Perfect, I said, feeling a cold excitement. That's all I need. Now go back to work as if nothing happened. Don't leave any trace. Wang was trying to destroy the evidence, but his clandestine actions were, in themselves, evidence of his fear. He was running scared, which meant I was on the right track. Now it was time to use the second weapon from my master's notebook, the name Golden Rock Trading Company and Director Chen. A quick search on business portals and search engines didn't yield much. Golden Rock was just a small trading company, registered with a vague, all-encompassing business scope, with an address at a cheap rental office building on the outskirts of the city. No website, no notable information. It looked like a typical shell company. I knew I had to find the link between this Director Chen and Chairman Wang. I spent the entire day scouring the internet, searching for any information related to Wang, his social circles, family, friends. I read hundreds of old articles, rewatched dozens of interview videos, and even went through photos from events he attended years ago. Finally, my persistence paid off. In a small article on a local news website from 3 years prior, I found a photograph. It was a picture from the grand opening of a high-end seafood restaurant, and in it, Chairman Wang had his arm around a portly, middle-aged man, both smiling broadly. The photo caption read, "Xinlong Group Chairman, Mr. Wang Jiangguo, congratulates Mr. Chen Hao, his brother-in-law, on the opening of his new restaurant in the Pudong district." Chen Hao, Director Chen, brother-in-law. Everything clicked into place perfectly. Golden Rock was Wang's private slush fund, registered under his own brother-in-law's name. He used Golden Rock to purchase cheap, low-grade C9 steel from smaller, less reputable mills, then created a set of forged documents to sell it back to his own company, Xinlong, at the exorbitant price of C11 high-strength steel. The massive difference, amounting to hundreds of millions, went straight into his private pockets. The reputable Xingsheng steel was just a front in the official contracts, perhaps delivering a small initial shipment for show, while the rest was all counterfeit junk from Golden Rock. The web of deceit was now fully visible. Wang not only concealed a critical geological problem, but he also actively built the tower with substandard materials for personal profit. He had created a two-headed monster, an unstable foundation, and a structure that couldn't bear its own weight. The Moonlit Pagoda wasn't just at risk of collapse. Its collapse was an inevitability. It was only a matter of time. Demolishing it was not just to erase evidence, but also an act of self-preservation from the inevitable disaster he himself had created. He would rather sacrifice one building, sacrifice my reputation, than face the consequences of the tower collapsing on its own, causing the deaths of thousands and the complete ruin of his career. The rage in me was now mixed with a deep, profound disgust. He wasn't just greedy. He was utterly devoid of humanity. I stared at the photograph of Wang and Chen Hao smiling, holding giant lobsters. The smiles of demons. And I knew my mission was not just to reclaim justice for myself, but to extinguish those smiles forever. The following week, Wang launched a massive media blitz, an all-out assault designed to shape public opinion and bury me deeper in disgrace. Major financial newspapers, prominent television channels where I knew Xinlong held shares or had deep connections, all simultaneously published lengthy analyses on the unfortunate incident of the Moonlit Pagoda. They all quoted anonymous experts and internal sources, alluding to grave errors in my overly ambitious design vision and unrealistically complex structural calculations. My name was dragged through the mud everywhere. My picture was placed next to images of the demolition. I became a symbol of failure, arrogance, and irresponsibility. Some particularly vicious articles even suggested I had intentionally hidden the flaws to protect my reputation until everything came crashing down at the last minute. Then, as a follow-up blow, I received a thick envelope from Xinlong's legal team, delivered by registered mail. It was a 20-page document, dense with dry legal jargon, officially notifying me of their intent to sue me for initial damages amounting to 500 million yuan. They threatened to bankrupt me completely, seize my home, and have my architect's license permanently revoked. It was a vicious psychological blow, calculated to crush the will of anyone. They wanted me to panic, to collapse and accept my fate as a criminal. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, a surprise came. 2 days later, a black luxury Audi pulled up in front of my house. Wang's close aide, A cold-faced young man named Xiang, who never showed any emotion, stepped out. He was dressed in an expensive suit, carrying a crocodile leather briefcase. "Chairman Wang sends his regards," he said when I opened the door, his tone flat and emotionless. "He says that no matter what happened, you dedicated many years to the company's growth. He doesn't want to see a talented architect like you end up in court at your age, utterly ruined." He placed the briefcase on the coffee table in my living room and opened it. Inside was a thin folder and a bank cashier's check. "This is a severance package of 10 million yuan, a recognition of your past contributions. In return, you simply need to sign this non-disclosure agreement, acknowledging partial responsibility for oversights in the design supervision process and pledging never to discuss Xinlong's internal affairs with any third party. The lawsuit will also be dropped." I couldn't help but laugh, a dry, bitter laugh. The stick and the carrot threatened to crush me, then offer a small prize to soothe me. Classic Wang. Did he really think 10 million yuan could buy my silence? Did he think money could buy a man's lifelong honor? Buy the truth about a monstrous crime? "Take it back," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "And tell Chairman Wang that an architect's honor is not for sale. Neither is the truth." For the first time, a flicker of surprise crossed the aide's icy face. He clearly hadn't anticipated this outright refusal. For him and his boss, everything had a price. He snapped the briefcase shut decisively. "You will regret this decision, Mr. Lin." "The one who will have regrets is not me," I replied, my gaze unwavering. After the Audi drove away, I knew I didn't have much time left. Wang had tried both methods. When neither the stick nor the carrot worked, he would resort to more ruthless measures outside the bounds of the law. It was time to fight back. It was time to start the storm. I couldn't confront an empire like Xinlong head-on. I needed to create a crack from the outside, a seed of public doubt that he couldn't easily extinguish. I sat down at my secure laptop and composed an anonymous email. No personal information, no direct accusations, just a few facts and questions to sow suspicion. I sent it to a single address, the encrypted personal email of Sun Li, a renowned investigative journalist in the financial sector, nicknamed the Hound, because once he caught the scent of wrongdoing, he would never let go. The content of the email was brief. "Dear journalist Sun, the Moonlit Pagoda case is more unusual than Xinlong has let on. Investigate the insurance claim they are about to receive. The amount is absurdly large, enough to cover all costs and still make a handsome profit. Ask them why they chose the extreme solution of demolishing an entire building instead of repairing a design flaw they have never detailed. And most importantly, find out which company truly supplied the steel for the project. The answer may not lie with the reputable contractor Xing Sheng, but with a small, unknown company called Golden Rock, a seeker of truth. I provided no evidence, just bait, just breadcrumbs. I knew the instincts of an investigative journalist like Sun Li. He would smell something fishy. He would find the answers himself. I hit the send button. The screen displayed the message email sent. The storm had officially begun. Now, all I had to do was wait and see where it would make landfall first. 3 days after I sent the email, the first article appeared. It wasn't on the front page of the major newspapers, a space I knew Wang could easily control. Instead, it was an in-depth, 1,500-word analysis piece published on a reputable online financial news portal where Sun Li was a star writer. Its headline was measured and professional, not sensationalist. Xinlong Group and its record, breaking insurance claim, unanswered questions. The article made no direct accusations, which was a testament to Sun Li's cleverness. He simply posed sharp, logical questions that any intelligent investor would ask. Why demolish a multi-billion-dollar structure entirely for a vague design flaw that had not been detailed? Why was no independent international panel of experts invited to assess the situation before making such a costly and extreme decision? And why was the insurance claim amount, according to a leaked source, even higher than the original construction cost, creating a paradoxical profit from loss situation? Towards the end, the article also briefly mentioned rumors within the construction industry about ambiguities in the material supply chain, and concluded with a thought-provoking sentence. In a volatile market, investors are awaiting greater transparency and accountability from the leadership of Xinlong Group. It was just a small ripple on the surface of the lake, but in the sensitive world of finance, even a ripple is enough to attract sharks. Xinlong's stock price dropped by a slight 0.5% in the morning trading session, a negligible number, but it was a warning sign. Wang had undoubtedly read it and understood the underlying message. Xiaoli called me in the evening, his voice tense. "Master, something big is happening at the company." Chairman Wang convened an emergency 3-hour meeting with the legal and public relations departments. I overheard them repeatedly mentioning the journalist Sun Li's name and the term communications crisis. The IT security team is sweeping the entire internal email system, tracing all external communications from the past week. They are hunting for the leak. "Stay calm," I reassured him, though my own heart was beating faster. "They won't find anything. That email was sent from the outside. Just do your job, look busy, and act like you know nothing. The more normal you act, the better." But I knew Wang wouldn't sit idly by. He would try to quell this ripple before it became a tidal wave. And just as expected, the very next day, Xinlong held a sudden press conference. Standing before dozens of cameras and microphones, Wang put on a masterful performance of a deeply saddened but resolute leader. "We deeply regret that baseless, malicious rumors have caused anxiety among our investors and the public," he said, his voice filled with authority and fake sincerity. "The decision to demolish the Moonlit Pagoda was the most difficult decision of my career, but it was a necessary one, prioritizing the safety of the community above all else. All procedures were carried out in accordance with the law and under strict supervision. We will soon release a detailed assessment report from an independent party to put an end to all speculation." A perfect performance. He painted himself as a responsible leader, a man who dared to sacrifice economic interests for the safety of the people. But I, watching the live stream online, noticed a tiny detail. When a young reporter unexpectedly asked about the Golden Rock Company, Wang's smile froze for a tenth of a second before he smoothly replied that it was just one of hundreds of minor suppliers, providing non-critical materials unrelated to the main structure. He had shown a crack in his armor. He had publicly acknowledged the existence of Golden Rock. Sun Li would surely have noted this detail. At the same time, I began the second move in my chess game. The media could only apply pressure. I needed an ally with real power, someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. I immediately thought of Director Chen of the Municipal Construction Supervision Bureau. Director Chen was known for his toughness, a modern-day Judge Bao of the construction industry, who had forced more than a few corrupt officials and businessmen into early retirement. My master had once worked with him on a key government project and deeply respected his integrity. Approaching him was not easy. He was known for never meeting with businesses privately to avoid gossip. But I knew he had a long-standing habit. Every Saturday morning, he would go to a quiet old tea house deep in a small alley to play Chinese chess with his old friends. That Saturday morning, I also went to the tea house. I didn't approach him directly, just quietly sat at a nearby table, ordered a pot of Tieguanyin tea, and set up a classic chess problem on the board before me. I knew Director Chen was a chess master, and I had laid out a perilous endgame, one named Sacrificing the Chariot to Save the General, a setup whose deeper meaning only an insider would understand. After about an hour, Director Chen's game ended in his victory. He stood up, and as he walked past my table, he paused. His eyes were fixed on my chessboard, where the red side was in a desperate situation. "An interesting setup," he said, his voice deep and powerful. "The red side is sacrificing its chariot to save the general, but in reality, it's to clear a path for the cannon behind it to deliver a checkmate, a risky but calculated move." I looked up and met his gaze, which was sharp and wise. "Director, sometimes to save the entire board, one must be willing to sacrifice a few important pieces, even the ones they hold most dear." Director Chen's eyes narrowed. He recognized me. "Architect Lin? I've heard about your situation. A great pity. What you've heard may not be the whole story," I said softly, just loud enough for him to hear. "I have another chess game, a much larger one, that concerns the safety of this entire city, and I need someone of sufficient stature and courage to play it with me." He said nothing, just studied my face for a long moment, his eyes seeming to pierce through all deceit. Finally, he gave a subtle nod. "Monday, 9 a.m., my office. You have 15 minutes. Stepping into the headquarters of the Construction Supervision Bureau on Monday morning, I felt an atmosphere entirely different from the glamorous world of Xinlong. There were no gleaming marble lobbies, no smiling receptionists in expensive uniforms. This place exuded a sense of solemnity, authority, and austerity. The corridors were silent, the walls lined with regulations, and the people who passed by had serious expressions. This was a place where power was exercised, not displayed. Director Chen was waiting for me in a remarkably simple office. There was only a sturdy wooden desk, a floor-to-ceiling iron filing cabinet, and a modest set of chairs for visitors. The only decoration on the wall was a single planning map of Shanghai. He didn't offer me tea, just gestured for me to sit in the chair opposite his desk. "You have 15 minutes, he repeated our agreement, glancing at his old-fashioned wristwatch. "Get straight to the point. No beating around the bush." I took a deep breath to calm my nerves. I knew I had only one shot. I didn't waste a second. I placed 2 prepared folders on his desk. "Director, these are 2 versions of the same geological survey report for the Moonlit Pagoda construction site. The folder on the left is the original version I obtained, conducted by Juding Geosciences. The one on the right is the official report that my design team received from Xinlong's management." I opened both folders to the conclusion page and turned them to face him. "Please take a close look at the warning about the underground karst cave system in the original version. And please note how it has vanished in the official report. It wasn't just removed, it was replaced with another page containing completely fabricated data." Director Chen's gaze immediately sharpened. He said nothing, picked up both reports, put on his reading glasses, and compared them word by word, number by number. The silence in the room was so thick I could almost hear my own heartbeat. "How did you obtain this original version?" he asked, his voice still even, but I could sense the gravity in it. He didn't look up. "From a source inside, Director. A young person who still believes in truth and professional ethics," I replied, determined not to reveal Xiao Li's identity. Chairman Wang Jiangguo knew about this fatal risk long before construction began. He deliberately concealed it. I pushed another, thinner folder across the desk towards him. And this is why he had to do it. This contains indirect but logically strong evidence showing that the Golden Rock Trading Company, a shell company registered under the name of Chairman Wang's brother-in-law, Chen Hao, supplied a large quantity of substandard steel for the building's load-bearing structure, while the invoices were all written for high-grade C11 strength steel. He gutted the project for hundreds of millions of dollars. This time, Director Chen looked up, took off his glasses, and stared directly into my eyes. "These are extremely serious accusations, Architect Lin. Do you have concrete proof of this steel fraud? Invoices? Delivery receipts?" "I do not," I admitted honestly. "I believe they have been moved to an off-site storage facility in the Jiading district, likely to be destroyed soon. It's a race against time." I paused, then continued. "But I have this." I took my master's leather-bound notebook from my briefcase and gently placed it on the desk. "This is the diary of my master, Lin Zhenhua, the founder of Xinlong. He documented everything, all his worries about Wang's actions, right before he passed away. These are not just words, Director. This is his conscience." Director Chen picked up the notebook with a certain reverence. He knew my master. He turned the pages carefully, reading slowly, intently. He read for a long time, much longer than 15 minutes, but I dared not speak, and the secretary outside dared not interrupt. When he finished the last few pages, he leaned back in his chair, his expression grim, his brows knitted tightly together. "Your master was a respectable man," he said softly, his voice tinged with melancholy. "I believe what is written in here, but unfortunately a personal diary cannot be used as evidence in a court of law." "I am aware of that," I replied calmly. "That is why I am not here today to ask you to immediately arrest Chairman Wang. I am here to ask you to do something that is squarely within your duty and authority. Issue an emergency order to seal Xinlong's document storage facility in Jiading, under the legitimate reason of serving the investigation into the Moonlit Pagoda incident. Establish an independent, interdepartmental inspection team to reevaluate the entire project process, from geological surveys and design approvals to material acceptance. Do it publicly and transparently." I looked him straight in the eye, channeling all my urgency into my gaze. "If I am wrong, I will bear full legal responsibility for slander. But if I am right, you will not only expose a crime, but you will also prevent similar disasters in the future and salvage the faith of an entire industry that is being eroded." Director Chen stared at me for a long moment, his eyes seeming to pierce through all thoughts, all deceptions. Finally, he picked up the internal phone on his desk. "Get the head of the inspection department and the head of the legal department to my office. Immediately." He put down the phone and looked at me. His gaze had changed. The skepticism was gone, replaced by the decisiveness of a man in command. "Thank you, Architect Lin. You have done very well. Leave the rest to us." My 15 minutes were over. But I knew the real chess game had only just begun. That very afternoon, the news broke like a bombshell, shaking the entire real estate and financial sectors of Shanghai. The Municipal Construction Supervision Bureau officially announced the formation of a special interdepartmental investigation team to clarify the cause of the Moonlit Pagoda incident. More importantly, in order to seal all related document storage facilities of the Shin Long Group, including the unnamed warehouse in the Jiading district, was executed immediately under the supervision of the police and the prosecutor's office. I could imagine the look on Wang's face when he received this news. He certainly had not anticipated such swift, decisive, and unexpected action from the authorities. Director Chen had given him no time to react. His plan to destroy the evidence had been thwarted right at the finish line. The warehouse in Jiading, which he thought was a safe haven to hide his crimes, had now become his own tomb. Xiao Li sent me a brief, encrypted message. "They're here." Director Chen led the team himself. "The entire company is in chaos. Fatty Zhang from the materials department looks like he's seen a ghost." Now, Wang was truly cornered. He couldn't destroy the evidence, and the inspection team was right inside his house, turning over every piece of paper. What would he do? He would certainly not sit and wait to die. He would use his extensive network of connections, use his money to bribe, use his power to put pressure on Director Chen and others. But I had placed my bet on Director Chen's integrity, and I believed I had bet right. For the next 2 days, the media was in a frenzy. The incident was no longer just an unfortunate accident, but officially a case under investigation. Shin Long's stock plummeted, losing over 20% of its value in just 2 trading sessions. Investors began to flee in panic. Wang was forced to appear before the public once again. This time, his confident and dignified demeanor was gone. He looked tired, haggard, and angry. He declared that Shin Long would fully cooperate with the investigation to clarify the truth. But at the same time, he insinuated that there were unscrupulous competitive forces deliberately trying to damage the group's reputation with false information. It was a public threat aimed at me, though he didn't mention my name. He was letting me know that he knew someone was pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Meanwhile, I was not idle. I knew the inspection team would find the forged invoices and fake acceptance reports in the sealed warehouse. But to convict Wang beyond a shadow of a doubt, they needed proof of the cash flow, of his motive for profit. My master's notebook had a few overseas account numbers, but that was old information. They might have been changed. I needed an expert in the financial underworld. I contacted an old friend from university, an IT genius named Chang, who was now a famous white hat hacker, specializing in tracing illicit transactions for large corporations. We met at a small, secluded coffee shop. I didn't tell him the whole story, only that I was helping a friend investigate an internal fraud case and needed to trace the flow of money between several companies. I gave him the names of Shin Long, Golden Rock, and a few other shell companies mentioned in my master's notebook. "This is tough," Chang said after looking through the list, his fingers flying across his laptop keyboard. "These guys use a very complex structure, routing money through multiple layers of companies in Hong Kong and the Cayman Islands to launder it. But no system is perfect." While waiting for Chang's results, I received a call from a public phone number. The voice on the other end was a stranger's, cold and menacing. "Mr. Lin, there are some things you shouldn't get involved in. Think about your beautiful wife and your school-age daughter." My heart clenched. They had started to play dirty. Wang was no longer just a businessman, he was a true criminal. I immediately called An Qi, told her there was an emergency, and that she had to take our daughter to her parents' house in another city right away, no questions asked. The urgency in my voice made her understand the severity of the situation. The rage inside me burned hotter. Wang wasn't just a white-collar criminal. He was a despicable coward. Just then, as I was consumed by worry and anger, Chang called. "Found it," he said, his voice filled with the excitement of someone who had just solved a difficult puzzle. Unbelievable. The money trail is incredibly complex, passing through 7 different layers of shell companies. But in the end, it all flows into a single investment trust account managed by a prestigious law firm in Switzerland. And the primary beneficiary of that trust, worth nearly $80 million, is none other than Mrs. Song Mei-ling, the wife of Chairman Wang Jianguo. He sent me an encrypted file containing the entire money flow chart, transaction codes, and digital evidence. It was the final piece, the silver bullet. Wang's web of deceit was now completely exposed, with no corner left in the dark. From the fake materials and the weak foundation to the illicit cash flow hidden so cleverly. The net had been cast, just waiting for the big fish to be hauled in. Now, I just needed to deliver this silver bullet to the right person and pull the trigger at the right time. The time had come. On Wednesday morning of the following week, the Xinlong Group held an extraordinary shareholders meeting at the city's largest hotel. The purpose was to reassure the panicking investors who had watched their assets evaporate day by day. Chairman Wang would preside personally, attempting a final effort to salvage the situation, to steer his sinking ship. The meeting was broadcast live on major financial news channels. The entire city was watching. This would be the stage for the final takedown. I knew Director Chen's investigation team would also be present, as observers. But I needed to ensure Wang couldn't use any legal tricks or loopholes to escape on the spot. I needed an all-out assault from every direction. An hour before the meeting began, I sat in a coffee shop opposite the hotel, using my secure laptop to send 2 final encrypted emails. The first email, sent to Director Chen's personal address, contained the entire illicit money flow chart Chang had discovered, along with the irrefutable digital evidence. The subject line had only 3 words: the final piece. The second email, sent to the journalist Sun Li, contained a scan of the original geological report and a few of the most critical pages from my master's diary, the ones documenting Wang's crimes. The subject was, "The truth about the Moonlit Pagoda. Publish when the time is right." At exactly 10 a.m., Chairman Wang walked onto the stage. He looked much more haggard than his usual powerful image, but he still tried to appear composed in his perfectly tailored suit. He began his speech with hollow platitudes about challenges, faith in the future, and a commitment to transparency. He tried to shift the blame to malicious rumors and unfair competition for causing the crisis. But as he was speaking, Sun Li, who was sitting in the front row reserved for the press, suddenly stood up, holding his tablet high. "Chairman Wang, my apologies for interrupting." His voice boomed through the microphone. "But I have just received a document of extreme interest. Could you please explain to the shareholders here why the geological report your company published is missing the section warning about an unstable karst cave system directly beneath the foundation of the Moonlit Pagoda?" The entire, previously silent auditorium erupted in murmurs. The cameras immediately swiveled to Sun Li and his tablet screen. Wang's face turned pale, and beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. He stammered, That is a forged document. A blatant slander." At that exact moment, the main doors of the conference hall burst open. Director Chen, in his formal uniform, entered decisively, flanked by investigators and a team of uniformed police officers. Their appearance silenced the entire hall. "Wang Jiangguo," Director Chen called out his full name, his voice echoing, stern and powerful throughout the vast hall. "You are under arrest for investigation into organized fraud, forgery of state documents, and construction of a project with substandard quality, causing extraordinarily serious consequences." Wang was stunned, turning to look at his team of lawyers with a pleading gaze, but they just bowed their heads, avoiding his eyes. They knew it was over. "We also have irrefutable evidence that you embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars of shareholder funds through front companies and transferred the money abroad," Director Chen continued, his steel-like gaze fixed on Wang. "The trust account in your wife's name, Mrs. Song Meiling, in Switzerland, has been frozen at our request." That final statement completely broke Wang. It was the fatal blow. He knew there was no escape. He staggered, collapsing into the chair behind him. The powerful, ruthless facade he had built over decades crumbled in an instant, leaving only an old, defeated, and terrified criminal. As 2 police officers walked onto the stage, pulling out a pair of cold steel handcuffs, Wang looked up. His panicked gaze swept across the crowd and inadvertently landed on me. I was standing at the back of the hall, near the exit. I didn't hide. I met his gaze directly, my expression unreadable. In his eyes I saw not a hint of remorse, only pure, unadulterated hatred, a hatred for the man who had destroyed his empire. But it no longer mattered. As Wang was led away, the hall exploded with the flashes of cameras and the frantic questions of reporters. Sun Li had published his bombshell article instantly. The truth was exposed to the entire world. I quietly turned my back and walked out of the chaotic hall. The wind from outside hit my face, carrying the fresh air. My mission was complete. My master's legacy had been protected. Justice, though delayed, had finally arrived. 6 months later, Shanghai had changed. The sky seemed a little bluer. The Xinlong Group case, or as the media dubbed it, the Moonlit Pagoda scandal, became the biggest scandal in the history of China's construction industry. It didn't just topple an empire. It triggered a series of extensive investigations and deep reforms within the state regulatory bodies. A host of officials and construction inspectors were dismissed and prosecuted. Wang Jiangguo and his key accomplices, including his brother-in-law Chen Hao, faced the harshest sentences under the law for their crimes. The majority of the embezzled funds were successfully recovered from overseas accounts, a rare victory for financial justice. The plot of land where the Moonlit Pagoda once stood was now a vast, empty space, carefully fenced off. But it was no longer a symbol of failure or shame. It had become a reminder, an expensive lesson on the importance of integrity and professional ethics. I did not return to the glamorous yet treacherous world of commercial real estate. Many major corporations had invited me to join them with unimaginable salaries and positions, but I declined them all. Instead, I accepted an invitation from the city government to head a newly established independent research institute for construction safety and sustainable urban planning. Here, I could use my knowledge and experience to establish new standards, stricter procedures, to ensure that a second Moonlit Pagoda would never rise on this land. Xiao Li, after bravely serving as a key witness in the case, also left the now comprehensively restructured Xinlong Group. He was now the deputy director of my institute, a capable, reliable colleague who still retained the fiery passion of his youth. One autumn afternoon, as the plane tree leaves began to turn yellow, I was taking a walk around the empty plot with Director Chen, who had now become a dear old friend. He was about to retire, but he still looked sharp and healthy. "Do you have any plans for this place yet, Lin Wei?" he asked, his eyes gazing into the distance at the empty land. "The city wants to turn it into a new landmark project." I smiled, a genuinely peaceful smile. "I do. I've submitted a proposal, and it has been approved in principle. Not another flashy skyscraper. Instead, a large public park, combined with a library and a center for culture and the arts. A place for everyone, regardless of wealth. A place for people to connect with nature and knowledge. A place with a soul." Director Chen nodded, a look of deep satisfaction on his face. "Your master in heaven would be very proud of you." Just then, my phone rang. It was in Qi. My family had long since returned to Shanghai, and life had returned to normal, even more peaceful than before. "Where are you? Your daughter and I are waiting for you for dinner." "I'm on my way home," I replied, my voice warm. I bid farewell to Director Chen and started walking home. Looking at the sunset descending over the city, painting a corner of the sky in crimson, I felt a profound sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a very long time. The storm had passed. I had lost the greatest work of my life, something I once thought was everything. But in return, I had found something far more important: peace of mind and faith in justice. Wang had been right about one thing on that fateful night. Sometimes, to build a new future, one must demolish the past. He had demolished my building to cover up his own sinful past. But I, along with many other good people, had joined hands to demolish a rotten system. And on the foundation of truth and justice, we would build something more solid, more beautiful than any tower of glass and steel. We would rebuild trust. 6 months of peace was a luxurious medicine, a quiet interval whose taste I had almost forgotten. The Institute for Construction Safety and Sustainable Urban Planning was running smoothly. Under my leadership and Xiao Li's energetic management, we had begun to draft a new set of safety standards for the city, a Lin Wei shield as the press liked to call it. The work was demanding but deeply fulfilling. I no longer spent sleepless nights on ambitious blueprints, but rather on regulations for materials, on safety coefficients, on the invisible things that determine the lives of thousands. Qi and my daughter had also found their normal rhythm of life. The scar from Wang's psychological terror remained, but we had learned to live with it. Occasionally, when passing the empty plot where the Moonlit Pagoda once stood, a touch of sadness still arose, but it was no longer the pain of loss, but a nostalgia for a hard-learned lesson. I had thought the biggest chess game of my life was over. I was wrong. One Tuesday afternoon, as I was reviewing a report on the compressive strength of a new type of concrete, my secretary entered my office to inform me that an elderly visitor, without an appointment, was insistent on seeing me. "He said he's a former engineer from Xinlong," she added. A vague sense of unease stirred within me. I asked her to let him in. The visitor was a man with stark white hair, a thin frame, and deep-set eyes that still held the sharp glint of a technical professional. He introduced himself as Old Zheng, retired for 3 years, and formerly the chief supervising engineer for the Golden Sea Commercial Complex, one of Xinlong's first major projects after Wang took power, built nearly a decade ago. "I apologize for the intrusion, Director Lin," Old Zheng said, his voice trembling slightly. "But after the Moonlit Pagoda incident, I haven't been able to sleep. There are things I think you need to know." He placed an old USB drive on my desk. This contains my entire construction log and some photos I secretly took during the construction of the Golden Sea. At the time, Chairman Wang forced us to rush the schedule unreasonably. He rejected my request for additional foundation reinforcement in the Tower A area, even though supplementary geological reports showed signs of weak soil. He said, "There's no time or money for unnecessary things." My heart began to beat faster. This was Wang's familiar modus operandi. "That's not all," Old Zheng continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. The entire system of post-tensioning cables in the shopping mall floors was replaced with a cheaper type from an unknown source. We protested, but Fatty Zhang, Wang's henchman, silenced all dissent. He said it was a direct order from the chairman. The Golden Sea Commercial Complex, a city landmark, with tens of thousands of people passing through it every day. It had stood there for nearly 10 years, a decade. It was like a ticking time bomb, and no one knew when the timer was set to go off. "Why are you only telling me this now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Old Zheng sighed, a sigh laden with regret. "I was afraid then. Afraid of losing my job, afraid of affecting my family. My son had just started university. I chose silence, and that guilt has tormented me all these years. When the Moonlit Pagoda scandal broke, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. If anything happens to that building, I will be a sinner for eternity." After Old Zheng left, I plugged the USB drive into my computer. What I saw inside was worse than what he had described. The covertly taken photos showed hairline cracks already appearing on the main support beams even as the building was being finished. The log files detailed heated arguments, technical requests being ignored, and acceptance reports being signed under duress. The Moonlit Pagoda incident was not a sudden corruption. It was merely the climax of a process of decay that had begun long ago. Wang Jiangguo didn't just build one tomb at the Moonlit Pagoda. He had scattered time bombs all over this city. I realized my battle was far from over. It had just entered a new, more complex, and much more terrifying phase. This time, I was not just facing an unmasked villain, but the toxic legacy he left behind. A legacy that could collapse at any moment, taking thousands of innocent lives with it. The very next morning, I convened an emergency meeting with Xiao Li and the key department heads of the institute. I presented the information Old Zheng had provided, not hiding the severity of the problem. The entire room fell silent. Horror was evident on every face. "We cannot release this information to the public immediately," I said, breaking the silence. "It would cause massive panic and could lead to unforeseeable consequences. What we need to do is act swiftly, precisely, and discreetly." Xiao Li, now a composed and capable deputy director, spoke up. "Xinlong has been restructured. The new chairman is Song Gang, who was formerly the vice president of operations. He has a reputation for being moderate and is working hard to rebuild the company's image. Perhaps we should start by working with them." It was a reasonable proposal. I couldn't use the old methods, the solitary actions of the past. I was now in an official position, and I had to follow procedures. I asked my assistant to arrange a formal meeting with the new chairman of the Xinlong Group. The meeting took place at the Xinlong headquarters, the very place where I had been humiliatingly fired more than half a year ago. The feeling of returning was strange. Everything looked the same, but its soul was different. Song Gang greeted me at the lobby himself, a humble gesture completely different from Wang's aloofness. He was around 50, tall, wore gold-rimmed glasses, and had a constant smile on his face. It was a smile that seemed sincere but generated no warmth. "Director Lin, what a great honor," Song Gang shook my hand firmly. "We are immensely grateful for what you did to expose the wrongdoings of the past. You are a model of integrity for the entire industry." He said the words I wanted to hear, but something in his eyes made me wary. We went into the conference room. I got straight to the point, presenting our concerns about the Golden Sea Commercial Complex without revealing Old Zheng's identity. I only stated that our institute had received credible information. Song Gang listened intently, his face gradually turning serious. He frowned, shaking his head in disappointment. "Unbelievable," he said after I finished. "The toxic legacy of Wang Jiangguo is far worse than we imagined. Director Lin, on behalf of the new Xinlong, I pledge our full cooperation with your institute. We will open the entire project archive for the Golden Sea. Whatever documents you need, we will provide." His cooperation was too perfect, too easy. It made me even more suspicious. True to his word, the next day, a team from the institute led by Xiao Li was granted access to Xinlong's archives. But what they found was a huge disappointment. Most of the most crucial documents, the detailed construction drawings, the material inspection reports, the foundation acceptance records, were regrettably lost during the chaotic transfer of power after Wang's arrest. Xiao Li called me from the archive, his voice filled with frustration. "Master, this is a farce. What they've given us is just worthless paperwork. They're playing for time." When I questioned Song Gang about this over the phone, he sounded extremely apologetic. "I am so sorry, Director Lin. Wang's old regime was too rotten. We are also having a headache cleaning up this mess. Please give us more time. I have instructed my staff to search in all our branches." A smooth lie. He was building a fortress of promises and fake cooperation. He was dealing with me using a completely different tactic than Wang. Wang used brute force and intimidation. Song Gang, on the other hand, used a smile and the facade of reform to hide the truth. I realized my new enemy was even more dangerous than the old one. Fighting a ferocious wolf was difficult. Fighting a fox in sheep's clothing was much harder. It knew how to hide its fangs behind a friendly appearance. And I knew, to pierce that mask, I couldn't just rely on official channels. I needed to find the cracks in that facade of fake reform from within. Our official investigation into the Golden Sea commercial complex quickly hit a wall. Song Gang and the new Xinlong management were perfectly cooperative on the surface. They responded to every official letter, attended every meeting, and always concluded with promises to recheck and report back as soon as possible. But the actual results were always zero. Critical documents remained missing. Key personnel from the Golden Sea project had either resigned and were unreachable, or had been transferred to remote overseas branches for business needs. It was a sophisticated strategy of attrition. They didn't refuse. They simply made the investigation process impossible. "We're being led around in circles, Master," Xiao Li said in an internal meeting, his frustration palpable. "They're using bureaucracy against us. At this rate, it could take years to get what we need, and by then it might be too late." I knew he was right. My patience had run out. To deal with someone like Song Gang, I couldn't play by his rules. I needed a surprise attack from a direction he wouldn't expect. That night, I once again sought out Sun Li, the hound journalist who had played a crucial role in toppling Wang. We met at a small, quiet bar. I told him about the current situation, about Song Gang's fake cooperation and the invisible walls we were facing. Sun Li listened in silence, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Song Gang," he repeated the name. "I've heard of him. An extremely clever man, always knew how to stay in the shadows. When Wang was at the height of his power, Song Gang was just an obscure vice president, never showing any ambition. He survived the purge precisely because of that harmless facade. But to climb to the chairman's seat in such chaos, he is certainly no ordinary man. I need your help," I said directly. "I need you to dig from the outside. Look into Song Gang's past, his connections, his personal financial dealings, anything that might reveal his true self. I believe he is not as clean as he appears." Sun Li took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes lighting up. "This is exactly my specialty, a corporate politician. Very interesting." While Sun Li began his hunt, I decided to make another bold move. I couldn't inspect the structure of the Golden Sea building from the inside, but I could inspect it from the outside, literally. My institute possessed high-tech equipment, including the latest generation of seismic scanners and ground-penetrating radar, GPR. Under the guise of a large-scale urban geological survey project to update the city's foundation map, a perfectly legitimate reason not targeting anyone. Specifically, I dispatched an elite technical team to conduct surveys in the Graydon 7 team area around the Golden Sea commercial complex at night. We used vans that looked like municipal sanitation trucks to avoid arousing suspicion. After 3 consecutive nights of work, we had the preliminary results. The data from the ground-penetrating radar showed anomalies. In the area under Tower A, the very spot old Zheng had warned about, the soil structure was not uniform. There were voids, areas of much weaker soil compared to the data in the falsified report we had. But the most terrifying discovery came from the ultra-sensitive seismic sensors. By analyzing the building's microtremors caused by traffic and city activities, our computer model pointed to something alarming. The natural frequency of Tower A was significantly lower than the theoretical calculation in the design. This could only have 2 causes. Either the building's mass was heavier than designed, or its structural stiffness was weaker than designed. Combined with what old Zheng had said about the replacement of post-tensioning cables and the gutting of materials, I knew for certain it was the latter. The building was weaker than anyone thought. Just then, Sun Li called me. His voice was full of excitement. "I found it. A crack. Very small, but enough for us to pry open." Before working at Xinlong, Song Gang was the chief financial officer for a small, now bankrupt construction company called Sheng Fa. And guess who was the largest shareholder of Sheng Fa? None other than Chen Hao, Wang Jianguo's brother-in-law. Everything suddenly became clear. Song Gang was not an outsider. He had been part of Wang's network from the very beginning, possibly one of his most trusted financial operatives. He wasn't cleaning up Wang's legacy. He was the one put in place to protect that legacy, to bury the final secrets. His reformed image was just a smokescreen for a much larger conspiracy. This battle, it turned out, was still a battle against the ghost of Wang Jianguo. The link between Song Gang and Chen Hao was the key we needed. It proved that Song Gang was not a clean successor, but part of the old network, a pawn that had been pre-positioned. But this alone was not enough to take him down. We needed proof of his direct involvement in Wang's schemes at Xinlong, especially in the Golden Sea project. I knew that the paper evidence was probably long destroyed or securely hidden, but in this digital age there are always traces left behind. Wang was a careful man, but he was also arrogant. He would surely have a place to store his most sensitive information, a kind of black book to control his subordinates and partners. A physical notebook like my master's was too easy to discover. It had to be something digital, encrypted, and hidden in a place no one would think to look. I had to call on Chiang, my white hat hacker friend, again. This time, the task was even more difficult. You want me to find something we don't even know exists, and if it does, where it is, Chang said over the phone, his voice skeptical. Exactly, I replied. But think like Wang. He trusted no one, not even his closest aides. He needed a tool to ensure their loyalty, an insurance policy for himself. Where would he hide it? Not on Xinlong's main server. That's too easily seized by investigators. Maybe an old backup server, a foreign cloud storage service, or even hidden in the source code of a forgotten project. It was a true search for a needle in a haystack. Chang and his team worked tirelessly for a week. They rescanned terabytes of Xinlong's old backup data they had from the previous case, analyzed data traffic going abroad from the IPs of the old management, and nearly gave up. And then, late one night, Chang called me, his voice electric with excitement. Found it! Unbelievable. It wasn't hidden far away, but right in plain sight. It was embedded in the source code of the website for the Xinlong Reaches Out Charity Foundation, a foundation chaired by Wang's wife. A charity foundation? I was surprised. Exactly. The perfect cover. Who would suspect a charity? Wang embedded an extremely sophisticated piece of code into the website. When accessed with a regular browser, it's just a normal website. But if you access it from a specific IP address, with a unique security certificate, and at the right time of day, it opens a gateway to a private server located in Panama. Chang had cracked it, and what they found inside was a goldmine. It was Wang's digital black book. A series of encrypted Excel files, audio recordings of phone calls, scanned contracts, and even videos. Everything was meticulously organized by project, by individual. I rushed to Chang's office. On the large screen, he opened an Excel file named Project Golden Sea, Fin. I guessed it stood for finance. Inside was a detailed table of off-the-books expenditures. Bribes to construction inspectors, kickbacks to suppliers, and most importantly, a clear note about a fund transfer to Song Gang and Chen Hao's company, Sheng Fa, under the guise of risk consulting fees. The figure was in the tens of millions of dollars. But what stunned me the most was a subfolder containing audio files. Chang clicked on one. The familiar voice of Wang echoed through the speakers, apparently recorded from a phone call. Gang, have you taken care of that shipment of post-tensioning cables? Make sure all the paperwork is clean. Don't make the same mistake as with the steel last time. The second voice that replied was unmistakably Song Gang's. Don't worry, Brother Wang. I've had someone replace all the original certificates. That old Zheng from the supervision team seems a bit nosy, but I have a way to make him shut up. I sank into my chair. This was it. The irrefutable proof. A smoking gun. Song Gang was not just an accomplice. He was one of the key enforcers in Wang's criminal network. His ascent to the chairman's seat was no accident. It was a calculated plan, a pawn promoted to protect the queen when the king was in danger. He had hidden his past perfectly. He had built a convincing new image. But he never expected that the ghost of his own former master, whom he was trying to bury, would be the very thing to drag him down to hell. This digital black book was not just Wang's legacy, it was Song Gang's indictment. Holding the digital black book, I knew I was in possession of a bomb with even greater explosive power than my master's diary. But this time, the approach had to be different. Song Gang was more cunning than Wang, and his regime was already on alert. A public confrontation at a press conference or a shareholders' meeting might give him time to maneuver, to launch legal smokescreens. Moreover, releasing this information indiscriminately could cause the complete collapse of Xinlong, costing thousands of innocent employees their jobs and destabilizing the market. My goal was not destruction, but purification. I needed a precise surgical strike to remove the tumor without harming the patient. I called Director Chen, even though he had retired. His experience and reputation were still invaluable assets. We met at the old tea house, at the familiar chessboard. I presented him with all the new evidence. He examined each document, listened to the recording again, his face growing more solemn by the minute. "This snake is even more venomous than we thought," he said after a long silence. "He fooled everyone. This time, we can't act at the bureau level. This involves international money flows, the stability of a major listed corporation. This must go straight to the city's highest level, to the Disciplinary Inspection Commission." He had given me wise counsel. This was no longer a simple construction case. It had become a case of organized economic crime and corruption. Through Director Chen's channels, I secured a secret meeting with the Deputy Secretary of the Municipal Disciplinary Inspection Commission, a man known for his iron fist. The meeting took place not in a government office, but at his private residence on a weekend evening. I presented everything concisely, logically, and directly. From the initial suspicions about the Golden Sea, Song Gang's sophisticated obstruction, to the undeniable evidence from the digital black book. I also emphasized the potential safety risk of the Golden Sea building and the need for immediate but discreet action to avoid panic. The Deputy Secretary listened without a word, his eyes as sharp as a hawk's. When I finished, he asked only one question. "Are you certain about the authenticity of these recordings and data?" "I have the best expert who has verified them," I replied. "They are completely original." He nodded. "Very well. Director Lin, thank you. You have done a great service for this city, once again. Leave the rest to us." There was no dramatic press conference. There were no public arrests. Everything happened quietly but with ruthless efficiency. 2 days later, on a Monday morning, the entire senior management of Xinlong received a summons for an emergency meeting at the headquarters of the Disciplinary Inspection Commission. Song Gang, without any suspicion, walked right into the prepared trap. That afternoon, the Xinlong Group issued a brief, shocking press release to the market. "Due to health and personal reasons, Mr. Song Gang has resigned from all positions at the group, effective immediately. A temporary management committee, supervised by representatives of the city government, will be established to ensure the company's operations." No further explanation. Song Gang had disappeared from the public stage as quickly as he had appeared. Rumor had it that he and a number of other executives had been isolated for investigation. The second purge had been carried out cleanly, without a single shot fired. Immediately after, my institute, in coordination with top experts, officially took over the re-evaluation of the entire structure of the Golden Sea commercial complex. A large-scale, costly but necessary reinforcement plan was approved and implemented immediately. The time bomb had been defused. A week later, I received a call from An Chi while I was at the Golden Sea construction site. "Did you see the news? They've started demolishing part of the old garden and library on the former Moonlit Pagoda site to begin construction." "I know," I smiled. "That was my proposal." A new foundation was being laid. Not just the foundation of a park, but a new foundation for an entire industry, an entire city. My fight would probably never truly end, because the fight against greed and deceit is an eternal one. But now, I was no longer alone. I had allies, a system, and most importantly, I had helped plant a seed of faith in a land that was once only ashes, and I knew that seed would grow.